It is difficult to stand out in the vast world of social media, but the Spittin Chiclets podcast does, thanks largely to two former players. Ryan Whitney was always in the spotlight as a high first-round draft pick, while Paul Bissonnette was at the other end of the spectrum, hanging on for a dozen years, doing whatever it took to stay in the lineup. Together, they are magic on Spittin Chiclets, and they are our guests today on After Hours. Former first-round pick Ryan Whitney, who made $25 million in his NHL career, is in Boston, and former marginal fourth liner Paul Bissonnette, who has gone on to become one of the biggest names in hockey, is at his condo in Phoenix, and Louis DeBrusque, as usual, is at home in Edmonton. So, Biz, did you see what I did with your intro there? A little salt followed by some sugar. It's an old broadcasting technique designed to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, quick shout out for Witt's agent, the Hamburglar, too. That was nice. Really nice of you.
Give me the money.
Look, you guys are so authentic on the podcast. You're not even trying to pretend to be the big-time polished broadcasters that Louis and I are. It's just you guys talking hockey. Is that one of the reasons for the success of Spittin Chiclets?
I think so. I think that just Biz and I and RA and Grinelli, when we get together, it's pretty obvious right off the get-go, if you've never listened, that we're not trying to be someone we aren't, which I don't think that the big-time hockey guys like yourselves are doing, but it's more just we'll admit when we have no clue, where you two guys kind of have to pretend you have a clue, even if you don't. So I think that the ability of us to be able to just once in a while be like, I don't know, Biz, what do you think? And then he says, I have no clue. And then we're like, let's move on. I think that sometimes people appreciate that. Now, we also get complaints, but then you'll tell people, hey, After Hours, Hockey Night in Canada, Elliot and Marek, there's different podcasts for different people, and I think ours is just more about messing around, having a good time, while also maybe reliving some of our old stories and some current players' stories that we're buddies with.
Well, Biz, just remember this. The key to broadcasting is sincerity, and once you can fake that, you can do anything in this business.
I tell people all the time, I don't know how people on the main networks don't mess up more. There's been a few times during Coyotes games where I've been on the Fox desk, and Todd Walsh has thrown it to me, and I've just been like, I forgot what I was going to say. And I don't know how they do it. And I'm fortunate that there's an avenue where we can kind of do our thing and not be polished, because I tell you what, that would just take far too much brain power for what you guys do every night.
I'll also say, not to hop in here, but I mean, we have the ability, we're recording, right? It's not live. So we always could be like, hold on, retake, 3, 2, 1. I mean, it's so different. I was at NHL Network. I don't know how I never swore. That was very impressive, if not trying to pat myself on the back while also patting myself on the back. But live's tough. Live's no joke. I was nervous on After Hours with you, Scott, partly because it was in Edmonton and I had people looking to kill me when I walked out a little there. Still, it was you guys do such a good job, because it's a lot tougher when you can't just stop and re-record.
Louis.
Paul, I've heard you talk about this being, it came about organically. And you guys, on the podcast, as you mentioned, have been just right up front and honest. When did you guys realize, though, that, hey, this is becoming really big and something?
Well, it happened very quickly. I think the idea all started when we were on our PTO in St. Louis, and the original concept was bring your hockey bags to a locker room where there would be video cameras set up. We would open our bag and there'd be beers in there. We would never even actually eventually get dressed. We would just tell stories in the locker room. And I wasn't that familiar with podcasts at the time. I'd never even listened to one. And, when I was still in the midst of playing and Ryan had retired and mentioned it online that he wanted to start one, Rear Admiral had reached out to him, Barstool picked it up, and they started out. And then when I hopped on, I think we gained that Canadian following. And within 6 months, I think we were like, oh, geez, like we're getting a couple 100,000 downloads every episode. And, it just, like I said, it just happened very quickly and very organically. And I'm very grateful that that I personally have something after my career, because without hockey, I just don't really know where I would be.
There are countless podcasts out there, and Spittin Chiclets is consistently in the top 5 in Canada, one of the top 5 sports podcasts in all of the USA. So it's big business for your parent company, Barstool Sports. And you guys, I'm sure, have heard that Joe Rogan's podcast recently moved to Spotify for a reported $100 million. So the question is, when are you guys going to hold up for more?
When Witt's agent gets answering his phone.
Yeah, but, hey, trust me right now. I can't believe we're ever getting paid at all to do this. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm very loyal to Barstool as well, and they treat us great. The thing about like making money in this is I swear to God, no matter what business you're in, once the greed takes over, it's like things always go downhill. And I know that sounds kind of stupid, but it's like things are going well. We're both making a really good living. We never thought we would be doing something like this, let alone being paid what we are. So let's just keep rolling, because anytime, any industry, I want more, I need more, it's like things start to change. So I'm trying not to think about that. Although I will say Rogan's 100 million, I started thinking, oh my God, I could fly private.
How could you
everywhere.
not?
This is game changing. I'll pick up Biz in a jet in Scottsdale. We'll go to Vegas for a couple nights. Jesus, what can we do here?
On a more serious note, though, as long as no one's having to pay to watch for what we're doing, I'm okay with everything. I think that we often talk about it with Whit. The game has been very good to us. And this is partly, I don't want to say my gift, but I like doing this because I want to break the barrier between things that maybe fans don't get to see that are going on behind the scenes. There are so many awesome personalities in the game. Louis, Scott, you guys know, because you guys hear these stories behind the scenes and the funny ones. And we want to bring the ones to light that our guys are comfortable telling. And it's kind of that locker room vibe. And we feel that given fans and what they pay to watch us and the salaries that we were paid, I mean, you let off with it at the top of the show, that they deserve this. And it's about the fans. And it's been a nice little, like I said, a retirement gift for me and myself. And it's been fun the whole way.
As we sit here and speak, I can't help but notice over your left shoulder, Ryan, Pink Whitney. Now, if that's not a sign of how successful Spittin Chiclets has become, that right there has taken off as well. I had to search, my wife searched all over Edmonton for a bottle of that for her daughter for Christmas. So it's become very popular. Talk about how that came about, and are you surprised at how successful it's been?
I tell every single person that this makes 0 sense. I'm telling you, when the podcast is out there, it makes no sense. Like take it times 100. And the fact that I have a drink, I've always said I'm a peasant, I'm a pigeon, and I have a drink with my name on it. But quick story, we've told it a bunch on the pod, but for people who've never heard it, we got sponsored by New Amsterdam, which is an amazing company. It's been great. They asked us to just talk about our favorite vodka drinks the first episode, just to organically talk about vodka. I said pink lemonade vodka, which I have been drinking forever. I love that drink. And it just took off. We're getting pictures, Pink Whitney, Pink Whitney, Pink Whitney, pictures. And Biz said to me, why don't we make a drink? I said, dude, Biz has a million ideas. Biz, no one's buying a drink with my name on. He's like, I don't know. Well, fast forward like 3 weeks, my wife said the same thing. We're getting all these pictures. Why don't you make the drink? I go, oh my God, if you and Biz are together, I got to keep you two away from each other and make sure that this happens. So we called New Amsterdam. Like I said, they've been great. They got the ball rolling, and now it's truly unexplainable because it's partly, I think, because of the pod and people really enjoy listening to us, which is the biggest honor. And then they want to support, the brand. And I think the drink's pretty good, vicious hangovers, but pretty good drink. And now it's like, yeah, you can't even get it. Ontario, Alberta, you can't even get it. But Louis, we're boys. You give me your address. Big ass case coming for you.
All right.
Same with Scott as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll drink the whole thing.
Listen,
Scott will drink the whole thing first day.
I'm always up for a few refreshments. Biz, you have your own endorsements, McDonald's, American Express. You get a rock star reception wherever you go. You're in great demand. I guess the question is, are you comfortable with your fame?
No. And
yeah, you are. I got to argue this.
No.
I'm not saying you're not uncomfortable, but you're very good at it. You're very know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I don't really consider it that. I mean, when people come up, I'll talk to them. I mean, ask Whit. Like, sometimes there's fans like, hey, I got to go here, and I'm still trying to talk to them. But no, it's been wild. It's a little weird. As far as like not letting it go to my head, I think I've hopefully done a pretty good job. But as I mentioned before, I'm willing to really do whatever. And I think that's partly, what has kind of taken on a mind of its own. And, I do work with a lot of brands. I mean, a bit of a brand whore, but I want to work with all these companies, and it's been great. And actually, when you talked about those vicious hangovers, I was going to try to slide in a DHM plug, DHM detox. So
here we go, boys.
There you go.
Swipe up.
Savvy.
Thanks for
Very savvy.
but I would say I think a lot of the deals come because there haven't been a lot of hockey players in the past who are maybe willing to put themselves out there as much, and I think guys are starting to see that there is an opportunity for them to stay in the game and doing these different things as far as like content's concerned. You're seeing Alex Killorn step up and do it. And considering there hasn't maybe been enough guys, that a lot of the work keeps going to the same one. So I would encourage more and more players to put themselves out there and maybe, come outside of that old school mentality of like, if you speak up, you're going to get hammered on.
And let me just jump in quick because Biz doesn't really pump his own tires. I'll play tummy sticks here with him, but he's so friendly and nice to everyone. Sometimes I can admit I get a little grumpy, a little moody. I'm like, let's go, Biz. I got to go. Well, meanwhile, he's talking to 100 fans, begging for pictures. Then finally I get him to go. He's like, hold on. I got to ask that guy where he got his shirt. I'm like, Biz, let's go. Yeah. He's just so friendly to everyone. And I think that really resonates with all his fans.
Well, on the topic of putting yourself out there, Biz, that's exactly what you did with the Biznasty Does BC web series that you developed shortly after you retired. And we're going to look at a portion of it because I just loved the genesis of it, the way it started.
When a legend retires. A two-time ECHL All-Star. A man who helped mold Sidney Crosby. The face of Arizona hockey.
Hold up. Who the wrote this? I like it. I like it a lot.
Louis, follow up.
my favorite part's Jason Rudy there, assistant equipment manager, just giving you the business in the media room there. That's pretty funny.
This was that was the first film project I did right after I retired. My knee that I got surgery on still wasn't fully recovered, but I wanted to dive in. I wasn't really sure where the media world was going to take me at that point. Right there, I just signed with the Coyotes to become the radio analysis, a job that Louis had at one point. So we actually both worked with Bob Heathouse, who's tremendous. And I was a little nervous as to what was past my playing career, and I wanted to dive in. I wanted to be more comfortable in front of the camera. I wanted to try my hand in producing, and I don't think it was anything revolutionary, but it did teach me a lot about being in that environment, which has led to a lot of brand deals and other opportunities. So I'm glad I just went out on a whim with my buddy and did that, and partly funded it, and I think it worked out in my favor. So thanks for bringing that up.
Okay. Yeah. The beauty of Spittin Chiclets is that it's really just you two and RA spinning stories and getting the best stories out of your guests. I don't think you set out to make news, but sometimes you do. I'm wondering how both of you felt about Jeremy Roenick being first suspended and ultimately fired by NBC for what NBC said were inappropriate comments on Spittin Chiclets.
You want me to take this one, Whit?
Yeah.
I felt terrible for everyone involved, because anytime we have anyone on our podcast, we give them full editing rights. Like if anyone who wants to get taken out, we don't want to put them in harm's way. And I think given Jeremy Roenick and Catherine Tapton's relationship, I think he felt comfortable making that joke. And who knows, maybe it was even made on their 3-week vacation together, because Catherine joined Jeremy and his wife. And, given today's environment, clearly those types of comments aren't acceptable. And I think once everything settled down, I think Roenick was probably like, I probably brought it a little too far. But it was just hard for us to see all that transpire, given it happened on our podcast. And I look back, I wish I would have remembered it and caught it and asked to take it out just to completely avoid the situation. So, I know there's some people who are going to be upset at Jeremy and never forgive him for that. But I believe behind the scenes, I think everything's been squashed and a mistake was made. And unfortunately, a relationship in which from Jeremy and NBC, it had to end.
Have you seen any carryover from that, guys, as far as trying to get guests on the show, or maybe being a little more reserved on the show and not speaking their mind?
We've only had one guy, Biz, since then.
Yeah.
not come on because of that. And I don't mind saying it was Ed Belfour. He didn't feel comfortable. He didn't want to come on. We were at the Winter Classic in Dallas, but that was the only person that I think since then's been like, oh, geez, because we do tell everyone, like Biz said, I mean, whatever you say, first of all, say whatever you want and then take whatever you want out. So I don't think, I mean, it's up to you to say whatever you feel. And if you say something you regret, get it out of there.
And Scott, I don't even mind you guys for asking the question because I think it's a good topic. We're learning just like anyone else. We're new to this industry, and with the popularity of podcasts, I think now we have more of a responsibility to be careful what we put out there because there are younger people listening. I would say that's really not the responsibility that any of us want, but you know, at some point you do have to grow up and take on that responsibility, and we're slowly learning, and we're trying to flirt that line between having a good time and being ourselves and, you know, and creating that humor, but also, you know, trying to be weary of people's feelings at the same time. So we're going to try to continue to move that needle but yet still entertain our fans.
Well, you know, on Spittin Chiclets, anything goes, including a lot of raw language. Don Cherry once said to me, if they ever banned the F-bomb, they'd have to call the game. So there's no shortage of F-sharps on Spittin Chiclets because it's just you guys and RA having a regular effing conversation. I'm wondering how tough it is for both of you to rein it in your conventional jobs. You, Biz, as the radio analyst for the Arizona Coyotes, and Ryan, you on the NHL Network. Ryan, go ahead.
It's not as hard as I would think. I think you just totally go into a different mode. Now, what I'll say is I've never listened to a pod. I actually listened to part of one because Biz interviewed Rick Tocchet alone. And I hate hearing the sound of my own voice. And I especially hate how much I swear because I tell you, it's just something I've become accustomed to. Maybe it's playing hockey, being around your buddies, but it sounds so stupid many times, but it's like, oh my God. So I think we're trying to get better at that, but still sometimes, you know, I'll have a couple beers, do the podcast. You're just hanging out with the fellas and then you let it fly. So professional wise, I just kind of go into a different mode where you just know, all right, live, not allowed to swear. Let's go.
Nails on a chalkboard when I listen to my own voice. I rarely tune into the podcast. And I was actually talking to Kelly Rudy and he's like, you guys just swear so much. And I'm like, I know part of it is crutch because sometimes the brain's not clicking properly and I'm not able to articulate my thoughts because, you know, we have our good days and our bad days. And I would agree with Whit. If there's one thing I could probably tone down, it's the swearing. But we just had Pistol Pete Vandermeer on recently. And sometimes we get guests on and every other word is an F-bomb. So I think he might have hit the top of the F counter.
I have a couple buddies here whose kids are say 12 to 14 or 10 to 12 years old, and they like the show. And I have to say, hey, this week's interview isn't for your son.
Like, not exactly kid friendly.
But that's brutal because I'm like, oh, come on, we got to figure this out. But in the end, people talk how they talk, so it's working.
Both of you have reached the level of popularity where you're going to be targeted, you're going to be trolled, and it seems to me, because I've checked your social media accounts, neither of you are afraid to engage the trolls. Why do you do it? Because most experts would say you should stay away from that for fear of raising their profile. Why do you engage?
I don't really follow the rules of like the networks or the corporations. Like if somebody wants to genuinely come after me, like some days if I'm in a mood, I'm going right back. And it's hard because, you know, with the level of the podcast and where it's gotten at this point, you know, we've had some people with check marks say some pretty gnarly things about ourselves. And you know, when you do that, you know, you're coming after my family name and you're basically questioning the way my parents raised me. And I just, you know, I agree there's some things that I joke around about that some people might take a little bit more seriously, but I have no problem going at them. And it's obviously with the continued growth of the podcast, it's gotten more severe, but talking to some, you know, experts in your guys' field, like I've reached out to the Bob McKenzie's and the Elliot Friedmans and those types of guys. And, you know, they've given me great advice, and it's just, I'll try to maybe avoid those situations. And as I get older, much like my line moving and being aware that, you know, we have to represent our podcast and all that stuff that associates with it, I'm going to try and tone that down. So Whit, I guess you're kind of similar in the sense where you don't mind chucking it back either.
Yeah, listen, nobody wins arguments on Twitter. There are no winners. You both look like fools. So I've just more gone to, I mean, recently I was complaining that golf was the only state in the United States that wasn't allowed in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And someone said like, oh, you know, whatever with the corona and you want people to die. I just wrote, shut the F up. Like I'm myself. I'd like to not get into beefs on Twitter because it is foolish, but sometimes I am who I am. I'm not really going to apologize for it. Just shut up, get out of my face. Don't follow me. You don't have to. And that's what I'm so grateful for Barstool with, because we're allowed to pretty much say, for the most part, anything you want to defend yourself. So these haters out there, they are who they are. I really don't care. But like Biz said, some days you're just in a little bit of a mood.
It's like it's like they're letting us know we don't know what we're doing, and we're saying we know. We're well aware. That's why we're on this podcast and not on After Hours.
You know what? You guys might be surprised to hear this, but I get it every Saturday night on Hockey Night in Canada. So I want to share my favorite tweet with you. Now that Don Cherry is gone, Scott Oak is the worst person on Hockey Night in Canada. Not for anything offensive, but just because he keeps asking awkward questions and just seems like a real douchebag.
Couldn't be farther from the truth, right?
No, but you're the best, buddy. But listen, here's my thing.
Listen, I'm sharing that with you because you guys are experts, and I want your advice. How would you have handled that tweet?
All right, let me quickly. This is how I work. I'd say, hey, you pigeon Ryan Cooper, why don't you use your real picture on your Twitter instead of being a coward and using some old painting? And don't watch me if you don't want to watch me, you absolute loser. That's what I would have written. And the thing is about these people. Imagine, I know all three of you guys. Imagine taking the time to tweet at someone like how much you hate them. Yeah. Dude, just hate them and move on. Like people who do that, you're such trolls. You're such low lifes. And the thing is, it is sometimes hard to let it roll off your back. But in the end, you think this pigeon would be doing anything to have my job. So take a hike, Ryan Cooper, with your fake picture.
I was gonna say I would have
owned him.
I was like that.
I would have said I'd pay for his flight and we could meet at the same barn that Brian Burke and Kevin Lowe are going to rent out to scrap, and we'll do the prelim. We'll get the before fight going.
You guys are on the undercard.
UFC Fight Island.
All right, let's move on, Louis. Let's talk some hockey here.
Well, Biz, obviously we know about your career. You're a proud member of the Fourth Line Grind, which I was too. So I'm very happy to be a part of that fraternity. And you grinded out a real tough, hard-fought 12-year career. Ryan, on the other hand, a little bit silver spoon, first-round draft pick, steps right into Pittsburgh with Sidney Crosby and the boys. But for Ryan, just explain what you remember about your career, because it started off with a great team and, you know what, obviously ended not in the greatest way for you with a foot injury that made you retire. But describe your career to us.
My career, I mean, it certainly didn't live up to expectations or what I had hoped and dreamed would be the case of winning a Stanley Cup. Wow, that's awesome. I haven't seen this in forever. That was a special moment. Turned out to be one of the worst first-round drafts you've ever seen. 2002. Check out that draft. Woof. But I mean, I got to Pittsburgh, and I remember the day Crosby got drafted a summer or two or three later, whatever it was, and celebrating. Like, oh my God, I'm going to play with this kid. Sure enough, because of him and Malkin, I ended up signing a huge contract that I feel so blessed and fortunate to have. And yeah, injuries really hurt. I never would have thought it kind of all would have ended as it did, but it just shows that this game doesn't owe you anything, right? Like you just when I think, oh, I'm going to play in Pittsburgh for 15 years, I'm going to win a couple Stanley Cups. It's like, boom, it can change in an instant. And I think that when I've looked back, I've talked about this on the podcast a lot. I really regret some of the things, the way I went out. I mean, I was miserable. I was blaming anyone but myself. I knew I was injured, but I also thought I should have been playing more. It was a tough time where I was immature, and I look back now and realized, yeah, injuries really derailed my career in a lot of ways. But the way I went about maybe even training, I worked out in the summers, but looking back, Biz and I have had this discussion over many dinners, like, we didn't do what the greats do, what the guys who play 12, 15 years do. I mean, they never take anything for granted, and I think I did. But that's why I'm so fortunate to do what we do now, to be able to stay in the game in a different way and almost in a sense maybe help guys realize, hey, you can party, you can have a blast, you could be who you want to be, but in the end, to win a cup, to be a champion, to be an ultimate teammate, it takes a lot more than maybe what I put in.
I
Ryan,
think that's
go ahead,
sir. Well, I was going to
No,
say
go
that's
ahead.
some good insight as to maybe why we're not as critical on players either, is because we've lived it. And you talked about what Ryan was going through at the end of his career. And of course, people probably think of the financial aspect where, sometimes we know what these guys are going through. We tend to be a little bit easier on them, where I understand the media's job is to be critical, but these players are still young and they're going through a lot and a lot of changes, and there's so much pressure on them where we try to alleviate some of that and kind of glance over maybe their big mistakes.
I remember
And
I was at the Olympics. I was barely playing. A little humble brag. I made the Olympic team in Vancouver, and I was
Silver
struggling.
medalist.
I was struggling so bad in Anaheim. I had struggled in Pittsburgh, been traded. It was just. I remember sitting there with my dad. I said, I wish I could give some of this money back. It was just like, and he said, "You shut up." He said, "You think that they're going to pay you more if you were out producing? You earned that money. Shut the hell up. Give money back. What are you talking about?" But it went into my mindset of yeah, you could be a fan who says he's making $30 million. I don't feel bad for him. Don't feel bad for him, but just understand that the money isn't everything. And when it's an athlete and he's proud and he's doing his best, that things aren't going well. No matter how much money you have, I'm telling you, there's days it really wears on you. It could be tough.
So Ryan, on one of your episodes, you wondered aloud if you'd ever scored any goals on Saturday night on Hockey Night in Canada, and said you'd like to see them, and we found a few for you.
Oh, nice, Biz. Yes. Let's see. Oh, I remember this. I think that was Super Bowl. That might have been Super Bowl Sunday, which I know isn't set. Look at that. No visor. I was never a visor guy. Eric Boganicki believes he coaches. Look at John LeClaire. Did I have 2 goals this game, or is this the same one? Same one. Oh, no, there's another one. Bink. Listen,
Same game?
Same, maybe. That pass, that play, Mike Yo, who's been an NHL coach, assistant coach, he taught me, listen, if you can master this play, that was playoffs, my only playoff goal. If you can master this play, Crosby will find you through the back door every time. So after practice, Mike Yo and I worked, and sure enough, Sid just puts it right on your tape, and I was able to kind of figure out that offside one-timer. This was a big late tying goal. Thank you, Carey Price. Who's that guy? Ever heard of him?
This is what I put up with on a daily basis, guys.
Yeah.
No, I've been begging people to send me my goal clips.
Hey.
Oh, this is another big tying goal late in the game. Look at this. Wrecking Ball finds the Wit Dog going back door. Another one. Boom.
Hey, now he's going to be telling you he wasn't paid enough after watching all these highlights.
Exactly.
This is what we're doing. We're going to be going back and forth.
Matt Sundin, how's that minus taste?
Oh, now you're going to have Leaf fans hating you.
Everyone
Just
knows.
like
Everyone
just
knows
like
I'm
Edmonton
messing.
fans.
Everyone knows I'm messing.
Okay,
You know what?
listen,
That made my day. That made my day, Scott. I appreciate that.
Perfect. We do what we can to please her. The NHL clearly is determined to finish the season. So Louis got the question.
Yeah, what do you guys think of the new 24-team playback format that they just announced this week? You guys like it or not?
I just think it's so hard to keep everyone happy. And I think given with what they've done in the short amount of time, I think their efforts need to be applauded. Not ideal that it's 24 teams, but I think from a revenue standpoint, it was the way to do it. I would imagine that people aren't shocked given that Chicago and Montreal made their way in. But I mean, ultimately, maybe even ask the players. I mean, I'm sure they're happy that they're going to retrieve a bunch of the revenue they would have lost if not otherwise. And I mean, guys, from a entertainment aspect and given what's happened, as long as everything can stay safe, I'm dying for hockey to come back. I'm hoping that they're able to execute this. And if they are, I think everyone's effort involved needs to be applauded. So hopefully everyone stays safe though.
Yeah,
Right.
I talked to Heater last night, and he was looking forward to working with you again, Paul.
Bob Heathouse, he's
Yeah.
been with the organization for about 15 or 16 years now as the radio guy. And he helped groom Louis, and just a well-prepared man and loves the game, loves his job. I don't think I've ever seen him have a bad day. So
I agree.
shout out to Bobby.
Ryan, what's your pick for the hub cities?
My pick for the hub cities. Vancouver sounds pretty nice. I saw that as one on the list. What a beautiful place to be in the summertime. And then maybe, I mean, I know I think it was every city was a Western Conference city. Not that it matters with no fans, but Pittsburgh sounds nice. I mean, I'm a Pittsburgh fan. Send the guys there. I don't know. It's really hard to figure where guys want to be. And the only issue I have, besides me saying this year's winner doesn't get the whole Stanley Cup, they just get the bowl at the top. That's going to be the trophy for this season. But it's more about guys. Devin Dubnyk brought up being away for like 3-4 months from family. I don't know how that's going to work, but in the end, I do want to applaud the league because every other league hasn't said anything. I mean, PGA Tour, right? That's a little different, but now hockey's at least given a plan, and I think it's just built excitement. At least let hockey fans have some glimmer of hope as to what we're going to be able to watch later this summer.
I know some people are upset about a home team having the advantage. I think Vegas is a no-brainer, just for the simple fact they have the resources with the resorts. They have some, golf courses if guys want to get away and get some separation. And I mean, I think it was built to hold something like that. But some people would be upset at the fact that, Vegas is there, they're in their homes, and that's such an advantage.
Okay, we're just about done here, and we really appreciate you guys joining us today. But before we go, Louis, what was the question about a couple of Spittin Chiclets initiatives that you were going to ask?
Yeah, just how they're going and how they came about, the ECHL and the bartender relief funds that you guys started through Spittin Chiclets. Talk a little bit about that and how important that is for you guys to do that.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I was on my couch and, I was smoking some cannabis. I know it's legal in Canada, so you guys can even mention that. And I think of all these wacky ideas, kind of like starting a vodka. But I noticed that they were like the first league to shut down. It might have even been in any sport in North America, but they just, they pay for the players' housing. So they just decided right away 3 weeks before the season ends, and they stopped and shut down the league. And I played in the ECHL. It meant a lot to me. I was fortunate enough where I was on an entry-level contract with the National Hockey League, so I wouldn't have been affected by this if it would have happened while I was playing. And I know what some of these players were making, so we figured we'd do our part. We had some old interviews in the bank, and $10,000 from each block of it ended up going to the ECHL Player Relief Fund. We had a Spittin Chiclets fan who out of Aspen, he actually played at U of A, University of Alabama, and he donated $10,000 of his own money. So I think total that we're going to be able to get to $100,000 mark from our podcast. And it was just us trying to do our little thing, as many people have, given the circumstances. I know Haley Wickenheiser and Ryan Reynolds hooked up, and they raised a bunch of money. So with that and the fact that we had the vodka, we figured the Bartenders Guild would be a no-brainer as well. And I think we raised over $50,000 for that. So listen, I think everybody's doing their part, and that was what we wanted to do.
Thanks.
How good of a guy's Biz? How good of a guy's Paul Bissonnette?
Oh, yeah.
The guy's
just
got
ask
a heart
me.
Of gold.
Yeah.
Just ask him, he'll tell you.
One final piece of business. Biz, do you have something coming up on Sportsnet that you wanted to promote?
Oh, geez, I don't know how much I'm supposed to say here, but we're going to be having some fun. Everything's moving digitally now, and we're going to do play some video games and get some special guests on and get to show these guys personality. And this is just, they're going to buy time for the real show to begin once the 24 team play-in playoff happens. So we're my co-host is going to be Sean McKenzie, and like I said, we're going to have some special guests on. Hopefully it'll be a good time.
Perfect. Listen, I want to thank you guys for joining us today. Really appreciate your patience, and love Spittin Chiclets. Take care,
boys.
Guys.
Same
Thanks,
to both
guys.
you guys. And Louis, we want to tell you, we interviewed your son, Jake, hell of a player for the Boston Bruins, and what a job you've done as a dad, because he's a great kid. We had a blast talking to him, and thank you guys for what you're doing for all the hockey fans out there with the After Hours and Hockey Night in Canada.
Thanks,
Paul Bissonnette and Ryan Whitney. Thanks again, guys.
See you guys.
Get your kids some driving lessons, Louis.
See you, boys.
Thank you all for watching on YouTube, Facebook, and sportsnet.ca. Join us every Sunday at 9 a.m. ET. Be safe. See you next time.